After watching many lessons and practicing for many hours, I am now making the video that I wish existed when I decided to learn perspective from scratch, just to realize what a beast of a subject it is. So if you also find perspective a bit intimidating, slightly scary, and you have no idea where to even start, hopefully this is the video for you. Maybe you're already familiar with why learning perspective is so important, but in case you need some convincing, perspective is the thing that turns flat-ass looking drawings into drawings that feel three-dimensional, that look like they're part of the real world. It is a fundamental art skill that can help you do so much by just mastering a few key concepts. Or so I've heard, because this beginner's guide is a guide for beginners and also by a beginner. I am on a self-learning journey, kind of just out to test out all the free online resources that I can find on a given art subject and perspective. I was not looking forward to that. And I kind of love it now. I found a way to make it fun and to make it work for me, and that I am hoping might work for you as well. Grab a pencil if you want. If you don't want, I have a Notion page linked down below with literally everything that I'll be mentioning here. And without further ado, here's the roadmap to perspective I wish I had from the start. Imagine you're given two choices. First one, you can spend weeks going over some kind of dense, complicated, technical stuff to try and improve your drawing ability, since you've heard it's something that you should learn to get better. Or two, you discover there is a way to unlock a whole new dimension on your drawing. You will now get to see and represent the world through brand new lenses. Things will finally make sense, and it will get easier to make the cool stuff you want to make. What path would you choose? Like, you get it, right? They're the same thing. I was on path number one for a while, and it was painful. I was scared of perspective and pretty unmotivated, and then one day, for some reason, it just clicked in my brain that what I was learning was like a magic trick. When things started to make sense, it was all just so exciting. I approached the lessons with this childlike wonder, feeling like I was making new discoveries and seeing the world differently, which was exactly what was happening. So my advice, if you want to save yourself the initial headache, is to just choose the fun path from the start. I think with anything that you decide to learn, if you put yourself in a mindset of openness and interest and curiosity, it's just gonna make things so much more enjoyable. So before you get too deep into any kind of technical stuff, and instead of just getting bombarded by a bunch of explanation, I would say maybe take a step back and try to reframe the way you look at perspective from this overly complicated thing that you need to learn to get better to something fun that you will get to learn, because I think you'll find it's a pretty fascinating subject. Here are a couple of interesting facts about it. It was invented / discovered during the Renaissance, and it single-handedly revolutionized the way that we represent the world on paper.
Just look at this 14th century painting of Jesus having his fateful tea party. The dimensions are all wrong. Jesus is twice as big as the others, so it looks like he's enjoying an intimate dinner with some schoolboys. But Da Vinci's reboot of the same painting is a different story. He knew how to perspective the out of things. You almost feel like you could crawl inside it and betray Jesus yourself.
It's not really a real thing per se, but more like a convention of rules that were observed, calculated, and formalized by the masters at the time. Rules which are then used to simulate the idea of a 3D space on a flat surface. It can get quite mathy if you wanted to, because with the proper math, you can get this representation as accurate as humanly possible. But if you don't want to, you really don't need to. You can just learn a few useful tricks that create this illusion of depth. And of course, there's much more.
There's many things that are interesting about them.
And I would say this would be the proper time on the journey to get acquainted with what perspective actually is and isn't. I personally had a few misconceptions about it myself, and it kind of broke my brain to try to understand that it's not really real, it's an illusion, but also very accurate and true to life. But I think it's extremely valuable to get this understanding early on, because for one, if you're gonna learn about this thing, you might as well just learn what it actually properly is. And also because it is liberating to find that it's just all a bunch of conventions and tricks, and those are easy enough to understand. You can think of these tricks as the whys of perspective. Why do objects look 3D? Why does it look like it's part of a three-dimensional space? What is creating that illusion? This is the part we start understanding that. One of the reasons can be because one thing is in front of the other. They overlap, so it makes it feel like there is depth to this space. Or because one object is smaller than the other. It shrinks in size because things get smaller as they get further away. And depending on the angle you're looking at, they get smaller and converge to the same direction. And well, these concepts have names. They're a bit of a mouthful, but they're easy enough to understand because you can easily find the evidence of it all around you. Things further back do look smaller than the ones at the front. Anyone that has tried to grab the moon or take pictures holding whichever landmark of your choice has seen the evidence of that. You look at a road ahead and you see that things are converging. You probably know all of that, but maybe didn't know that that is perspective. And by taking some time to let your brain really understand what these tricks are, you'll start internalizing them to be able to combine them and build up on them for what comes next, the more formal basics of perspective. Terms like horizon line, vanishing points, 3, 2, 1 point perspective. Some of the more technical terminology that you may or may not have heard of before, this is your time to start getting familiar with them. These are usually the things that are first introduced when you search for things like what is perspective or how to draw in perspective, but I personally think you'll find it's much easier to get the hang of them if you took the time to properly understand why it happens. That's what I did. Like I said, this is the most common introduction to perspective you'll find. Pretty much all the lessons go over these concepts, and essentially they are a combination of the whys we just learned, but put together as guidelines so you can start putting things down on paper. Very, very briefly, just for the sake of it, the idea here is that you define the eye level of the viewer and points to which the objects or the sides of objects will convert to as they get smaller in space. And as you start placing things on the scene and following these guidelines, you start creating the illusion of depth. Don't worry if you didn't really get that. I wouldn't have either. But luckily there are great instructors out there. They do a much better job at explaining it. So rest assured, take your time to really understand these terms and make sense of this, because in order to draw in perspective, this is pretty much the foundation you need. And actually the next step will be to put all of that into practice. But first, why don't we play a little game? In Portuguese, we say that what the eyes don't see, the heart doesn't feel. And I would like to borrow that sentiment today to say that what the eyes don't see, your hand will not draw. Observation is like at least 50% of drawing. Once you see it, you are basically halfway there. So with that in mind, here are the rules to this game. Go around and connect the things that you are seeing to the things that you just learned about perspective. Is this in 1, 2, or 3 point perspective? Where is the horizon line? Where are the vanishing points? I mean, you don't have to answer that, and maybe you don't know it just yet because you most likely didn't go and watch all the lessons and then came back after doing all the steps that I just mentioned, which you definitely should. So, like, what are we doing here? Hopefully you get the point though, because if there is one thing I swear by in this video is this. I can't stress it enough how much observation alone has helped me. By practicing observing the world around me and making those connections, seeing and putting a name to things, I was slowly learning everything. I was training to properly see and absorb the concepts out in the world when I was walking around or in the bus or even at home watching a movie. I would just be constantly playing this game in my head. Even before sitting down to practice, that was already great practice. You need to be able to see it in order to properly learn it. So if you want to take just one thing from this video, let it be that. Practice seeing in perspective. And then, of course, practice actually drawing in perspective. Homework. What you will essentially be learning during the studying the basics part is how to make grids, and now is your time to practice those. Do that homework, make those grids, and 1 point, 2, 3, place some boxes in those grids, which we'll talk about more in just a little bit. Understand their placement in space, looking from above, from below, from the side, straight ahead, easy peasy. I guarantee there will be very simple exercises to do once you get this far, so just practice those basics until you feel like you really get it. And to tell you the truth, I think once you are this far ahead, it is pretty safe to say that you learned perspective. Like, you did it. The path moving forward is just going to be expanding on that. And a lot of it is going to be about boxes. Boxes are the most simple, basic, fundamental form with volume that can start existing in this 3D space you create when you make a grid. So you'll find that everyone is going to tell you to start by placing boxes in those grids to practice, because boxes are quite literally the building blocks of perspective. And the building blocks of drawing. They alone already easily indicate volume, and they can also show you direction, proportions. You can rotate them, use them to sketch out compositions. It is extremely convenient to learn with boxes before moving to more complex shapes. And then you'll find that even those shapes can be broken down into boxes or placed inside boxes. Boxes are the of perspective. They're the most important thing for you to practice, because if you can draw good boxes in perspective, you can draw anything in perspective. Allegedly. But the thing is that, okay, I make
the horizon line and place vanishing points, make my grid, okay, make my box, and now I can draw my three-dimensional funny hat.
What? No one's got time for that. Perspective grids are extremely valuable, but you're not going to want to draw a grid every single time you want to make a box, so then you can use that box to make something that looks 3D. It just doesn't make much sense. It would be much more convenient to learn how to draw a box in perspective without needing the perspective grid, so that eventually we're able to draw anything in perspective without really needing the perspective grid. And that's when things start to get interesting. The more boxes you draw, the more you're going to develop what is called intuitive perspective. You'll get a sense of where the lines need to go without really needing the grid. And lucky for us, there is a little thing that exists online that precisely focuses on developing this specific skill, the 250 boxes challenge. Maybe you've heard of it. Doesn't need to be introduced. I feel like the name is pretty self-explanatory. And you'll find on the Drawbox website every single thing you need to know prior and during the challenge. Essentially, it's a challenge about drawing mini boxes. It's a pretty popular challenge, but from what I can tell, it's also a bit controversial, so I wanted to share my 2 cents on it. I did the whole challenge and I had a really good time. I'm someone that thrives with these big quantity kind of challenges, because I like that feeling of having something small that I can slowly work on every day that then becomes larger than the sum of its parts. And I feel like I learned so much and improved so much with it. Not that I got to draw a perfect box or something, because that's really not the point. The goal is to draw many okay boxes, but to find logic to them and refine them so that with each things start to make more sense. Like I was saying, everything that we learned thus far just starts getting more intuitive. I feel like I have much better spatial awareness now. Seeing volume on a page is not so hard anymore. And also I have like box ray vision now. Like I can see boxes all around me, which really kind of is a superpower. It feels nice to have an achievable goal to hit, something with a beginning, middle, and end to it. Like, it really works. I feel like I got more than I bargained for. However, all that being said, I do think that part of the controversy comes from this big, scary number. And I agree that 250 boxes is a lot. I kind of struggled to finish it, and I don't think that you need to do 250 boxes, especially if it's something that is just gonna suck the fun out of drawing for you. It's not supposed to be a task that you absolutely dread and you just needed to get over with. You can learn to have fun with it. In my drawing lines and shapes video, I actually go a lot into how it can be fun to do these repetitive mechanical practices, but it's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine. Don't force it because it's something that you feel like you need to do in order to get good at perspective, because that's not true. But if you do like challenges, it is there. There is a whole community behind it, so maybe give it a try. And if you do decide to go for it, here are a couple of tips to keep in mind. First and foremost, enjoy the experience. Like I said, the advice I gave in my previous videos suits this challenge perfectly. I talk about how it can be very meditative to draw something simple over and over again. It's great for when you want to sharpen your skills but don't want to have to think of something to draw, and it should also be enjoyable. I treated my drawing box this time like a self-care moment. I would get home from work, light up candles, make tea, put comfy clothes, and just craft this time as a time that I would actually really love spending. Number 2, this should absolutely not be the only drawing that you do. Drawbox calls it the 50-50 rule, that you should spend the same amount of time you are spending on boxes on just drawing things for fun. One thing does not replace the other. This is to practice your technique and sharpen your mechanical skills, but it is not what drawing is. I was sketchbooking like crazy while working on these boxes, and I could not have done it without it. If you want stats for reference, I was drawing 5 boxes a day in the beginning, and then 10, and towards the end I got faster, so I was doing like 20 a day. Everything in around 1 hour of practice. It took me exactly 2 months to get through all of it in what I consider to be a pretty slow pace. Sometimes I just found it really hard to get ideas for shapes of boxes. I would make it up or look around and try to find a reference, but like halfway through, I felt like I had done every single box that could possibly exist on this planet. So a tool that really helped me get over that was this 3D box modeling website that you can rotate the box and make it any size you want. So I would just position it somewhere and use it to give me a place to start from. Now, is that cheating? You tell me. And lastly, there is this one video that I watched around the 150 mark that was incredibly helpful to get my any lines to be more accurate. It's a bit of a hack, so I was also like, is this also cheap? But it does have the Drawbox seal of approval, and it worked really well for me too. If anyone has questions about this challenge, I'll be happy to answer. I actually thought that it would be harder to do it than what ended up being, and when I finished it, I actually kind of missed it for like 5 minutes until I realized that there were a million things to do after that. The goal here is to build our way up into things, objects, scenes, people. You learn the basic building blocks and then you use them to build. And for that, mastering boxes really is just the beginning. But at the same time, literally look at everything that has been learned so far. If we think of it as a map, sure, it can be just the start of a long journey, but also an entire journey in itself. And it's a journey that I feel incredibly accomplished to have taken. This is where I'm currently at with my perspective learning. I feel like I got so much from it already, and it's exciting to think that with continued practice, these building blocks would just be put into better and better use. After boxes comes other forms, cubes, rotations, stacking, bending, adding, and a bunch of other endless cool things, because they are really cool. It's important to go about it as, wow, there are so many things to learn, instead of, Wow, there are so many things to learn. I don't think you can learn all there is in a couple of months or in one video. And also, who is to say that you need to learn all there is to know? These are just some tools that can help you with construction, accuracy, drawing things from different angles. It helps a lot with creating things from imagination. People that have been doing it for ages swear by it. So I reckon it's something that is worth practicing, but just in case it needs to be said, none of this is what art is about. I saw recently this post that talked about how it's kind of shitty that we see human activities like making art as skills rather than just as behaviors, as if the point of doing them is to get good at them instead of just being something that humans do. And I completely agree with that. But then also there was this comment that said that things can get more fun to do when you start getting better at them, which I think it's also a pretty solid point. But in either case, having a good time is what matters. So I wish you a lot of fun in your perspective journey and in your art journey overall. Thank you so much for making it all this way, and I will see you on the next one.